Hey y'all, it's Heather here with Underwater Panther, and on this channel, I work at the intersection of astrology, psychology, moral cognition, and power dynamics, both individually and collectively. So, this video, I am going to be talking a lot about the feminine and masculine integration or lack thereof in the developmental stages of both women and men and breaking them down individually, then comparing the two, and getting into how we should be worried about the lack of integration between men and women and how they differ between each other. So, most people can feel that relationships are breaking down, but they keep trying to explain it with surface language. Communication styles, gender roles, dating advice, or men versus women. That framing misses what's actually happening. What's collapsing isn't romance, it's containment. So, talking a lot about the polarity, masculine and feminine containment, and yes, that does begin in childhood. We're living in an era where the systems that used to align responsibility with consequence have weakened family, community, economy, law, and initiation structures. So, this one will be about the initiation structures. When that happens, adults don't suddenly become free. They either integrate internally or they fragment. And when fragmentation becomes normal, relationships stop being places of partnership and start becoming places of negotiation. Who carries, who benefits, who avoids, and who pays? Women feel this first because the cost hits their bodies, their time, their finances, and their children. So, what I'm going to do here is not moralize. I'm going to map mechanics, how modern systems reward minimal responsibility, how loopholes replace honor, and how rebuilt containers actually look today if we want families and intimacy to survive under pressure. All right, so this section is it about women being better, stronger, or morally superior. It's about where development is forced instead of chosen. Female development, on average, doesn't stall in the same places. Male development often does. Instead, it accelerates early and under pressure. Not because girls are inherently more mature, but because reality does not give them the same exit ramps. Responsibility arrives sooner, consequence arrives faster, and containment often never arrives at all. What looks like female maturity is frequently premature load bearing. And what looks like strength is often necessity. And what looks like choice is often adaptation. To understand why women burn out, disengage, or opt out later, and why this gap feels so intolerable to integrated adults, we have to trace when responsibility is imposed, how agency is withheld, and why development accelerates without protection. This follows a predictable timeline where female development accelerates and sometimes overloads. All right, so this pattern follows a predictable timeline across 3 age-defined developmental phases. So phase 1 from attuned to responsible, ages 4 to 12 for girls, early childhood through early adolescence. So, what should happen? In a healthy developmental arc, a girl learns how to be emotionally attuned without losing herself. At this stage, she should learn I can feel others and still have boundaries. Care does not require self erasure. Responsibility is shared, not automatically mine. My needs matter alongside other people's needs. This is where healthy feminine integration forms, not as weakness, but as capacity. empathy paired with boundaries, sensitivity paired with selfhood, responsibility paired with choice, care without sacrifice. Attunement should be something she has, not something she must perform to stay safe. What actually happens now? Instead, many girls between roughly ages 6 through 12 are quietly trained into premature responsibility. They are praised for being easy, helpful, and emotionally aware, rewarded for calming adults instead of being cared for, subtly positioned as emotional stabilizers in family systems, taught that conflict avoidance equals maturity. That they learn early smoothness equals safety. Making things easier for others keeps them protected. Emotional labor is a virtue. So the lesson internalized is simple and powerful. If I stabilize the environment, I will be safe. This accelerates responsibility before agency is formed. Unlike many boys, girls do not learn they can disengage when overwhelmed. They learn that disengagement is dangerous. They learn they must hold. This is the first asymmetry and it shows up early. So that was ages 4 through 12. Phase 2, from care to overfunctioning. Ages 13 to 25, adolescence through early adulthood. What should happen? As a woman matures, care should integrate with discernment. During adolescence and early adulthood, she should learn selectivity, standards, reciprocity, and containment of her energy. Care becomes intentional, not reflexive. This is the phase where a woman should internalize, I choose who I invest in and why. Not everyone gets access, not everyone deserves endurance, not every struggle is hers to fix. What actually happens? Instead, from roughly ages 14 through 25, care is moralized and overextension is rewarded. Emotional labor becomes normal. Romantic effort becomes proof of goodness. Patience is framed as virtue. Endurance is confused with love. Women are praised for trying harder, staying longer, explaining more, and fixing what others won't. So care mutates into overfunctioning. Women learn to explain instead of exit, to fix instead of assess, to tolerate ambiguity longer than is safe, to absorb instability quietly so no one else has to. This is where the gender divergence sharpens. Where many men learn I can disengage without immediate cost, women learn if I don't hold this together, everything collapses. This is not softness, it is premature load bearing. Phase 3, from responsibility to identity. Ages 25 through 45, partnership, motherhood, and long term life building. What should happen at this stage? Responsibility should finally be shared and supported. Responsibility becomes chosen, not assumed, reciprocated, not exploited, reinforced by institutions, buffered by community and partnership. A woman should internalize, I am not alone in carrying what matters. This is where care should become sustainable. What actually happens now? Instead, many women, especially between the ages of 25 through 45, become the system itself. They plan, regulate, anticipate, and stabilize, absorb shocks when things fail, compensate when others disengage, fill institutional gaps quietly. Meanwhile, institutions assume women's unpaid labor. Men's disengagement is normalized. Minimal male compliance is praised. Strong women becomes an identity, not a choice, but a necessity. So responsibility doesn't just become part of identity, it becomes isolation. Women don't opt out because they can't handle responsibility. They opt out because they've carried it for far too long. My hair's like looped behind my earring. That looked funny. All right, so why this looks like maturity and is. They frequently are particularly why this looks like maturity. So responsibility tolerance, consequence awareness, future oriented thinking, and emotional regulation under uncertainty. But here's the distinction that matters. Male immaturity often comes from avoided consequence. Female maturity often comes from unavoidable consequence. That's not superiority, that's pressure. Maturity develops where escape is not available. The female cost of accelerated maturity. Accelerated development without protection produces chronic vigilance, difficulty resting into trust, reluctance to rely on others, delayed or avoided intimacy, and eventual disengagement or opting out. Women don't disengage because they hate responsibility. They disengage because responsibility has been unilateral for too long. So, the parallel truth men often stall before responsibility consolidates. Women often consolidate responsibility before support exists. One avoids load, the other absorbs it. Both outcomes are produced by the same collapsing systems. So, the real fix for both, not men stepping up as rhetoric, not women softening as expectation, but structural repairing. Responsibility paired with agency, care paired with structure, consequence paired with honor, intimacy paired with containment. Until that happens, men will keep delaying, women will keep carrying, relationships will keep collapsing, and children will keep paying the bill. All right, so now I'm going to get into the boys maturing or not section. Jeez. All right, so this section is not about men being bad, weak, selfish, or morally inferior. It is about where development is delayed instead of forced. Male development, on average, does not accelerate under pressure the way female development often does. Instead, it frequently stalls at specific developmental thresholds, not because men are incapable of maturity, but because modern systems provide buffers, exit ramps, and absorbers that prevent consequence from consolidating into identity. What looks like male freedom is often deferred responsibility. What looks like choice is often insulation. And what looks like autonomy is frequently development paused mid transition. To understand why so many men disengage, minimize obligation, negotiate duty, or default to minimum compliance, and why this gap becomes intolerable to integrated adults, we have to trace when responsibility is optional, how consequence is diluted, and why identity never fully consolidates. All right, so where male development stalls and sometimes fractures. Phase 1, from dependent to accountable. Ages 6 through 14, late childhood through early adolescence. What should happen? In a healthy developmental arc, a boy learns, my actions affect others. I am responsible even when I don't feel like it. I don't get to opt out of impact. Accountability exists whether I agree or not. This is where healthy masculine integration begins. Agency paired with consequence, autonomy paired with responsibility, strength paired with restraint, and desire paired with limits. Responsibility should become embodied, not theoretical. What often happens instead? Instead, many boys learn that consequences are delayed, softened, or negotiated. Adults or systems absorb fallout. Emotional labor is handled elsewhere. Disengagement is tolerated. So the lesson internalized becomes if I pull back, someone else will cover it. Responsibility becomes conditional. Accountability becomes external. Agency never consolidates internally. This is the first stall point, and it often goes unnoticed because the boy still appears functional. Phase 2, from desire to stewardship. ages 14 through 25, adolescence through early adulthood. What should happen? Desire should integrate with responsibility. A young man should learn attraction does not equal entitlement. Sex creates obligation, not just experience. Impulse is not authority. Freedom includes restraint. This is where masculinity matures. Desire becomes contained, not acted out. What often happens instead? Instead, during adolescence and early adulthood, sex becomes available without stewardship. Porn trains novelty over bonding. Avoidance is framed as freedom. Responsibility is postponed indefinitely. So desire never integrates, it splits. Pleasure becomes disconnected from consequence. Intimacy becomes optional. Identity becomes compartmentalized. This is where down low patterns, chronic avoidance, and relational instability begin. Not because of sexuality, but because desire never matured into care. I need a drink. Phase 3 from role to identity. Ages 25 through 45. Partnership, fatherhood, and long-term adulthood. What should happen? Responsibility becomes identity. A man internalizes, my role exists even when I'm unhappy. My presence matters even when unseen. My absence causes harm. I am accountable regardless of recognition. Responsibility is no longer negotiated. It is who he is. What often happens instead? So instead, many men between roughly 25 through 45 experience fatherhood as optional, provision reduced to minimal compliance, presence framed as extra, and systems rewarding legality over engagement. So the internal logic becomes, if I meet the minimum, I've done my duty. This is not adulthood, that is legal minimalism. And it produces men who are technically compliant but structurally absent. Why this looks like selfishness, but is deeper. This isn't ignorance, it's developmental arrest. Men often know better, and they seriously know better. They seriously know what they're doing, just FYI. They just never become better because becoming better requires irreversible cost, loss of optionality, identity restructuring, and responsibility without applause. Most people don't choose that. They're forced into it, and men are increasingly not forced. The male cost of stalled development. Stalled development produces chronic avoidance, defensiveness around accountability, resentment towards responsibility, fear of commitment framed as wisdom, reliance on systems, women, or legality to regulate life. Men don't disengage because they hate responsibility. They disengage because responsibility was never internalized as identity, only as liability. The parallel truth. Women often consolidate responsibility before support exists. Men often delay responsibility because support exists regardless. One absorbs load, the other avoids load longer. All right, so now I want to get into the developmental maps, female acceleration versus male stall across ages. So combining both together and comparing. So most conversations about men and women break down immediately because they start at the wrong place. They argue roles, they argue power, they argue who's failing whom, but none of that gets to the root. What actually determines whether a relationship becomes stabilizing or extractive is not gender performance. It's internal integration. How a person metabolizes responsibility, risk, care, and consequence before those pressures are handed off to a partner, a child, or a system. Healthy male female integration is not about dominance or submission. It's not about tradition versus modernity. Modern. Modernness, modern relationships. So it's not about the old or the new. It's not about who leads and who follows. It's about whether the masculine and feminine capacities inside a person are integrated enough to carry real life without displacing the cost onto someone else. When that integration exists internally, relationships stop functioning as extraction systems and start functioning as structures that can actually hold weight. All right, so let's start with stage 1. Ages 4 through 12. Girls from attuned to responsible, boys from dependent to accountable. What healthy development looks like in girls. So, positive examples from the ages of 4 through 12. A girl learns she can be sensitive and still be separate. She can notice feelings in the room without becoming responsible for them. She can say no without losing love. She can ask for help without being punished. She learns that adults regulate themselves and that her job is to be a child, not the emotional manager. You see healthy integration when a girl expresses sadness or anger and is met with calm containment, not guilt. Says, I don't like that, and gets protection, not dismissal. Helps sometimes, but is not praised for being easy at the cost of her needs. Is taught that kindness includes boundaries, not just accommodation. Learns that conflict is repairable, not catastrophic. When unhealthy development looks like in girls. So, negative examples. Many girls learn early that stability is something they must create. They get praise for being helpful, quiet, mature, and easy. They're rewarded for calming adults instead of being cared for. They learn that emotional labor is virtue and conflict avoidance is maturity. You see early split formation when a girl watches her mother emotionally unravel and learns to not be a burden. Becomes the peacemaker between volatile adults. Gets praise for being so mature when she's actually anxious and hypervigilant. Suppresses needs because having needs creates drama. Becomes responsible for siblings, household mood, or parental emotional stability. Her internal rule becomes, if I stabilize the environment, I'll be safe. This is responsibility without agency. It's premature load bearing. What healthy development looks like in boys. Boys learn that impact is real and that accountability is non negotiable. He learns that strength includes restraint. He learns that apology means repair, not just words. He experiences consistent consequence without humiliation and learns to tolerate discomfort without collapsing into avoidance or defiance. You see healthy integration when a boy is required to follow through and complete tasks even when he doesn't feel like it, makes mistakes, and is held accountable without being shamed into hatred of responsibility, is taught to regulate anger rather than discharge it onto others, learns that emotions don't excuse behavior, receives male modeling of responsibility as dignity, not as oppression. What unhealthy development looks like in boys. Many boys learn that accountability is negotiable. Either consequences are inconsistent, softened, outsourced, or absorbed by others. Emotional labor is handed elsewhere. When the boy disengages, someone compensates. When he underperforms, the system adjusts around him. You see early stall formation when a boy learns that mom will handle it, learns that avoidance works if he stalls long enough, is rescued from consequences repeatedly, is rewarded for charm instead of follow through, becomes emotionally entitled, anger gets accommodated instead of contained. His internal rule becomes, if I pull back, someone else will cover it. This is the first stall point. Stage 2, ages 13 through 25. Girls from care to overfunctioning, boys from desire to stewardship. What healthy development looks like in women. A young woman learns discernment. She learns that empathy is not unlimited access. She learns that attraction is not a contract. She learns that love does not require endurance of instability. She learns to choose when she invests in and to leave early when reality is inconsistent. You see healthy integration when a young woman can feel compassion without rescuing, can say, I care, but no, leaves inconsistent men early without needing proof, doesn't interpret boundaries as cruelty, does not confuse intensity with intimacy, understands that her time, body, and nervous system are non renewable. Her internal rule becomes I choose investment where structure exits. What unhealthy development looks like in women. This is where modern culture trains women into chronic overfunctioning. Romantic effort becomes virtue. Patience becomes moralized. Endurance becomes love. Women are praised for being understanding and shamed for leaving early. Emotional labor becomes the default female role. You see overfunctioning when a young woman explains instead of exits, fixes instead of assess, tolerates ambiguity as complexity, accepts future promises as commitment, becomes the emotional regulator of a man who refuses internal regulation, stays because she sees potential rather than reality. Her internal rule becomes if I don't hold this, everything collapses. That creates chronic anxiety and delayed boundaries. So, what healthy development looks like in men? A young man learns stewardship. Desire gets integrated into responsibility. He learns that sex creates obligations emotional, relational, and ethical. He learns that freedom includes restraint and that masculinity means holding power without abusing it. You see healthy integration when a young man treats sex as serious, not casual consumption, understands that intimacy requires truth, can tolerate rejection without rage, learns self command instead of dopamine chasing, builds competence and reliability as identity, has older male mentorship that models dignity and duty. His internal rule becomes my impulses do not outrank my obligations. What unhealthy development looks like. Many young men now get porn before polarity, dopamine before discipline, sex before responsibility, and identity before self knowledge. Desire becomes detached from consequence. Novelty replaces depth. Secrecy becomes a pressure valve. You see split desire when a young man uses porn as emotional regulation, escalates stimulation instead of building intimacy tolerance, treats women as validation sources rather than people, believes commitment is a trap but expects access, avoids accountability by staying ambiguous, compartmentalizes behavior and then calls it freedom. His internal rule becomes I can discharge pressure without carrying responsibility. That's where down low and chronic cheating patterns get seated because desire never becomes stewardship. Stage 3, ages 25 through 45. Women from responsibility to identity, men from role to identity. What healthy adulthood looks like for women. A woman's responsibility becomes chosen and supported. She is not the system alone. Partnership is reciprocal. Fatherhood is present. Institutions don't require her to carry everything. She can be soft without being unsafe and strong without being isolated. You see healthy integration when a woman shares load without begging, can rely without can rely on someone without fear, doesn't have to manage reality alone, is supported economically and relationally, trust becomes structure. Trust because structure exists, not because she's forcing trust. Her internal rule becomes I am not alone in caring what matters. What unhealthy adulthood looks like for women. This is where strong women become survival identity. Women become the default system. They plan, regulate, anticipate, absorb shocks, and carry children through instability. Institutions assume women will compensate. Men's disengagement is normalized. Minimal male compliance is praised. You see isolation when a woman becomes financially and emotionally self sufficient out of necessity, stops expecting real partnership because it has been too costly, opts out of intimacy because risk is too high, becomes hypervigilant because she has been forced to be, carries motherhood with little support and no margin. Her internal rule becomes if I don't do it, it won't get done. What healthy adulthood looks like for men. A man's role becomes identity. He is a father even when the relationship ends. He carries responsibility even when unseen. He provides continuity. He sees responsibility as dignity and protection, not as loss. You see healthy integration when a man is present without being forced, contributes beyond minimum compliance, treats his word as binding, understands that children measure reliably, not on paper, not paperwork, recognizes that authority is earned through sacrifice, not demanded through rhetoric, doesn't need praise to do what must be done. His internal rule becomes my presence matters even when no one claps. What unhealthy adulthood looks like for men. This is where legal minimalism becomes identity. Fatherhood becomes optional. Provision becomes symbolic. Presence becomes extra. A man meets the minimum requirement and claims moral completion. He externalizes blame, frames duty as unfair, and uses compliance as status. You see stalled integration when a man pays the minimum and calls it duty, feels morally superior compared to deadbeats, uses money as a shield against relational responsibility, disengages because his effort doesn't feel rewarded, avoids questions because questions threaten identity collapse, treats his child's needs as his ex's problem. His internal rule becomes if I meet the minimum, I've done my duty. That is not adulthood, that is avoidance. All right, so what repair looks like for both. For women, repair means feminine containment, leaving earlier, enforcing boundaries without over explaining, refusing to subsidize male avoidance, requiring structure before exposure, and investing only where coherence exists. For men, repair means masculine initiation, internalizing duty as identity, integrating desire with stewardship, building self command, becoming reliable under stress, and treating responsibility as dignity, not as liability. For both, repair means rebuilt containers. Consequences that are real, norms that honor reliability, communities that track pattern over persona, and systems that stop rewarding fragmentation. What healthy male female integration actually looks like in practice. So, this is the part most conversations avoid because it requires clarity. Healthy integration is not about gender roles, dominance, submission, tradition, rebellion, or nostalgia. It is not about who leads or who follows. It is about internal polarity integration expressed through behavior. How a person metabolizes responsibility, risk, care, and consequence before those pressures are outsourced onto a partner or system. When masculine and feminine integration internally, relationships stop functioning as extraction systems and start functioning as stabilizing structures. Integrated masculine in practice. An integrated masculine does not seek control, it provides containment. Containment means holding pressure without displacement, absorbing uncertainty without externalizing blame, structuring reality so others don't have to compensate. This is not about dominance, it is about load bearing capacity. What this looks like in real life. An integrated masculine initiates responsibility without being asked. He does not wait for reminders, ultimatums, or emotional escalation. If something depends on him, he acts. Initiative is automatic, not negotiated. Plans before exposure. Financially, emotionally, structurally. He does not ask others to take irreversible risk while he keeps exits open. He secures housing, income stability, timelines, and expectations before merging lives, not after. Carries consequences without resentment. When responsibility costs him something, time, money, comfort, and optionality, he does not frame that cost as exploitation. He understands that adulthood includes asymmetry. Stays engaged even when appreciation is absent. His sense of duty is not dependent on praise, validation, or emotional reward. He does not withdraw care because it wasn't noticed. Protects stability before crisis arrives. He anticipates strain instead of reacting to collapse. He addresses weak points early because prevention is part of responsibility. An integrated masculine does not need to be needed in order to act. He acts because impact exists. He does not ask, "Do I still have authority?" He asks, "What happens if I don't hold this?" That is the difference. Integrated feminine in practice. An integrated feminine does not overfunction. It discriminates. Discrimination here does not mean judgment or coldness. It means discernment paired with self-respect. Integrated feminine energy is not infinite giving. It is selective investment. What this looks like in real life. An integrated feminine chooses investment deliberately. She does not give access simply because someone wants it or asks for it. Care follows demonstrated stability, not potential or promises. Requires clarity before merging. She does not merge finances, homes, bodies, or futures in ambiguity. Clarity is not a demand, it is a prerequisite. Exits misalignment early without over-explaining. She does not exhaust herself trying to convince someone to be capable. She recognizes when something is structurally unsafe and leaves without turning it into a trial. Allows others to fail without rescuing. She does not stabilize environments at the expense of herself. She understands that rescuing prevents maturation, both theirs and hers. Rests into trust only when structure exists. She does not lean into chaos, hoping it will become safe. Trust is a response to containment, not a substitute for it. An integrated feminine does not stabilize chaos to earn safety. She requires safety to invest. That single shift changes everything. Integration together. When masculine and feminine are integrated internally, relationships stop being extraction systems. They stop operating on hidden contracts like, "I'll carry more if you stay," "I'll provide just enough if you don't ask for more," "I'll tolerate instability if it eventually turns into commitment." Instead, integration creates structural reciprocity. What this looks like together. Masculine carries structure so feminine does not overextend. Stability is not created by one person compensating for another's avoidance. Structure is actively held. Feminine humanizes structure so masculine does not harden. Care and attunement prevent structure from becoming rigid, authoritarian, or disconnected from lived reality. Responsibility is shared, not negotiated. There is no constant bargaining over who does what. Each person carries what aligns with their capacity and role without resentment. Care flows without self-erasure. Giving does not require depletion. Support does not require collapse. Both people remain whole. Authority exists without domination. Decisions are made, direction exists, and no one has to disappear for leadership to occur. This is what actually produces real intimacy, not just closeness, durable families, not just cohabitation, stable children, not just survival, and adults who don't burn out, disappear, or resent their lives. We did not fail because men are bad or women are naive. We failed because responsibility and agency were separated. Care and structure were divorced. Consequence lost honor. Integration stopped being taught early. When responsibility is cared without agency, people disengage. When care is given without structure, people burn out. When consequence is minimized, development stalls. When integration is absent, someone always pays. And right now, that cost is still falling disproportionately on women. Until internal integration is restored in individuals and in systems, people will keep compensating instead of partnering, and women keep paying first. All right, so I want to get a little bit deeper into what rebuilding the container. So, what rebuilt containers actually look like today? And closing with a man only address that forces reckoning without shame. So, part 1 of rebuilding containers. What rebuilt containers look like today? So, a container is anything that absorbs pressure, enforces consequence, aligns responsibility with agency, and makes coherence easier than fragmentation. So, rebuilding containers does not require going backward. They require closing loopholes that lets adults avoid integration. So, below are the modern equivalents of containers. So, relational containers, replacing trust me with structure. What failed? Relationships built on assumptions, intimacy without verification, commitment without enforcement. What rebuild looks like: explicit agreements instead of implied roles, transparency as a condition of intimacy, not a reward, boundaries with consequences, not ultimatums, exit clauses that don't destroy one party financially. So this is not romantic, it is stabilizing. People integrate faster when deception cost access immediately, rather than being negotiated endlessly. Number 2, parental responsibility containers. All right, so presence over compliance. What failed? Financial minimums framed as fatherhood. Courts enforcing payments but not presence. Mothers carrying full developmental load. Men confusing not illegal with responsible. What rebuild looks like: child support tied to time and involvement, not just money. Escalating consequences for absence, not just arrears. Social stigma for abandonment returning, not public shaming, relational consequence. Systems that make disengagement harder than engagement. Men mature when absence becomes more expensive than presence. Number 3, economic dignity containers. Contribution must mean something again. What failed? Effort disconnected from outcome, work stripped of identity, men reduced to wallets or liabilities, provision without authority. What rebuild looks like: clear pathways from contribution to respect, fatherhood and provision restoring social standing, workplaces rewarding reliability and follow through, not just signaling. Men seeing that being dependable increases leverage, not reduces it. Men engage when effort produces dignity instead of resentment. Number 4 is sexual and desire containers. Desire integrated, not suppressed or outsourced. What failed? Desire detached from responsibility, porn replacing bonding, secrecy replacing restraint, and novelty replacing depth. What rebuild looks like: sexual access requiring coherence, no sexual relationships that require deception to exist, norms where secrecy itself is a red flag, desire managed through containment, not denial, no purity, not purity containment, community containers, belonging with standards. What failed? Communities that tolerate fragmentation, no consequences for unreliability, isolation framed as autonomy. What rebuild looks like: men known by pattern, not persona, repeated behavior carrying social consequence, respect attached to consistency, unreliability quietly closing doors, no spectacle, no humiliation, just access reduction. Male initiation containers, still missing. What failed? No adult men guiding younger men. No thresholds for adulthood. Responsibility never confirmed. Masculinity defined by optics or rebellion. What rebuild looks like. Men accountable to other men. Rights based on contribution, not ideology. Mentorship tied to behavior, not talk. Responsibility conferred, not assumed. Men mature fastest when other men refuse to collude with avoidance. Female containment. What failed, women forced to overfunction, emotional labor replacing boundaries, accommodation replacing discernment, and rescuing men from consequence. What rebuild looks like. Women exiting early instead of repairing endlessly, boundaries enforced without explanation, financial and relational protection prioritized, intimacy offered only where coherence exists. This is not cruelty, this is child protection. So, a man only address. Men. All right, so let me see. Actually, I should probably make this into a different video. Let me see what's going on here. Yeah, I don't know. I'm assuming more women will be watching this, but I'll end it with this cuz it's kind of funny. All right. All right, so right now, a lot of men are running split systems, one public version, one private version, multiple relief valves, and constant optics management. This is not freedom, this is overhead. Every split identity leaks, every compartment adds stress, every secret creates leverage against you. You don't feel powerful because you are powerful. You feel powerful because you haven't been tested yet, and pressure always comes. Here's a law you cannot outrun. If you don't integrate internally, you will lose control externally. Not as punishment, as mechanics. Split systems fail the same way bridges do. Load exceeds capacity, stress fractures form, collapse happens suddenly. Everyone says we didn't see it coming. But the signs were there. What integration actually is and isn't. Integration is not confessing everything, emotional dumping, public humiliation, or surrendering authority. Integration is one operating system, no behavior requiring deception, no relationships built on omission, and no relief mechanisms that weaken your structure. It is consolidation. What you gain by integrating. If you integrate, decision making simplifies, anxiety drops, leverage increases, exposure risk collapses, authority becomes durable, and relationships stabilize or end cleanly. You stop being managed by fear, you stop needing cover, you stop calculating lies. That is strength. What happens if you don't integrate? Relationships shorten, trust erodes, women disengage, children inherit instability, authority becomes brittle, stress tolerance declines, simulation must escalate. You will not feel this immediately, you will feel it later when options close. All right. So I've got quite a bit more here, but I literally need a break. I'm exhausted. I've been filming for hours, researching for hours, getting these together for hours. I was supposed to be working on another book and another series, but I have not dumped videos into this series in a while, and so I wanted to. And anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe. Feel free to leave your thoughts and comments. Your thoughts and feelings in the comments below. Yes, I'm exhausted. Yes, I'm monotone. It is what it is. I'm not trying to bring too many personal experiences and bitch and moan and cry. I am a very systems architectural thinking person, so this is how I deliver information. And anyways, talk to y'all later. See you in the next video.